It really does spark your curiosity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To look out at the incredible tapestry of life on our planet and, wonder how it all came to be. We
Hmm.
see the world changing around us. But to grasp the monumental processes that have shaped life over billions of years, that's a journey we kind of want to make accessible for you today.
Absolutely. And we've assembled a really compelling set of resources to guide us. We'll be looking at a university lecture transcript that really brings the historical side alive, I think.
Right.
And we're pairing that with key sections from an open source biology textbook, plus other scientific findings to give us the essential knowledge and, the evidence behind it all.
So our aim really is to take you on a deep dive into the theory of evolution.
Hmm.
We want to unpack the core ideas, look at the powerful evidence that backs it up,
Uh,
clarify the difference between like the small scale changes and the really big picture of how new species arise, and tackle some of those common misunderstandings that still seem to hang around.
yeah.
Think of this as your shortcut, maybe, to a much clearer and more profound understanding of one of science's most fundamental insights. Okay, so to start us off, where should we really dig in?
Well, the most logical place, I think, is with the foundational aha moment. The mid-19th century was a real turning point with two remarkable naturalists, Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace,
Right.
independently arriving at this groundbreaking concept, natural selection.
And these weren't just academics thinking in isolation, were they? Both of them were real adventurers. Darwin, famously on the HMS Beagle,
Yeah, that 5-year voyage.
circling the globe, and Wallace spending even longer stretches exploring the Amazon and the Malay Archipelago. Just imagine the sheer number of new creatures they saw.
Oh, their firsthand experiences were absolutely critical. Darwin's observations of finches in the Galapagos Islands are like the classic example.
Uh-huh.
He noticed that while the finches are clearly related, the species on different islands had distinctly shaped beaks. Each one seems specialized for the particular food sources available right there. So that raised the fundamental question: how did this incredible variety, within a related group, come about?
And their answer, natural selection, boiled down to a few core observations, didn't it? Inheritance, overproduction, and variation. Can you walk us through how those pieces fit?
Sure. First, they recognized the simple but really crucial fact: offspring inherit traits from their parents. That's step one.
Got it.
Second, they saw that organisms tend to produce way more offspring than the environment can actually support. Limited resources.
There's a struggle.
Exactly. This leads inevitably to competition for survival and reproduction. And third, within any population, there's a natural range of variation among individuals, and crucially, some of these variations can be passed on. They're heritable.
Okay, so you've got tons of offspring, they're competing, resources are scarce, and some just happen to have traits that give them a slight edge in that struggle. What happens next?
Well, that's where descent with modification comes in. Individuals with those advantageous inherited traits, they're more likely to survive and successfully reproduce.
Makes sense.
And because those traits are heritable, they'll become more common in the next generation. Over countless generations, this gradual buildup of small advantages leads to significant changes in the characteristics of a population. It's kind of like the environment is constantly editing the population's traits over huge stretches of time.
It's just amazing that such a powerful explanation came from such careful observation and logical thinking. And it wasn't just Darwin, right?
Yeah.
Wallace was right there, too. Tell us about that.
Yes, exactly. In 1858, Wallace, who knew Darwin was working on similar stuff, sent him a manuscript outlining his own remarkably similar ideas.
Wow.
And this led to this extraordinary moment of, scientific collaboration and integrity. Darwin, who'd been meticulously building his theory for decades, worked with colleagues to arrange a joint presentation of both their papers.
That's incredible.
Yeah, at the Linnean Society in London. Then, in 1859, Darwin published his massive work on the origin of species, laying out the whole comprehensive case, backed by just tons of detailed evidence.
The real turning point in understanding life. And it wasn't just an abstract idea, was it? We have real examples of this happening, even relatively recently.
Oh, absolutely. The long-term research by Peter and Rosemary Grant on the Galapagos finches, it's a fantastic demonstration.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Well, they observed how, during a severe drought back in 1977, the types of seeds available on the islands changed dramatically.
Okay.
Finches with larger, stronger beaks were just better equipped to crack the bigger, harder seeds that were left. And so they had a higher survival rate.
Makes sense.
But the really cool part is that the average beak size in the finch population actually increased in the very next generation. It shows natural selection right there, in action, responding directly to the environment. It just highlights how responsive evolution can be.
So natural selection is a key driver, key engine, but it's not the only factor, is it? What else shapes how life changes over time?
That's a crucial point, yeah. To get the full picture, we need to dip into population genetics. This field focuses on how the frequencies of different gene versions alleles change within populations.
Okay.
So in genetic terms, we actually define evolution simply as any change in these allele frequencies over time.
Allele frequencies. Okay, so if we think about, say, flower color, an allele frequency would be how common the gene for red flowers is compared to the gene for white flowers in that group. How do those frequencies shift then?
Exactly right. And one fundamental source of new alleles and therefore changes in frequencies is mutation. Mutations are random changes in the DNA sequence. They are the ultimate origin of all new genetic variation. Think of them like occasional typos in the genetic code. Now, mutations can have different effects. Some might lower an organism's fitness, its ability to survive and reproduce. Others might give it an advantage, a beneficial effect. And many might actually have no significant impact at all. They're neutral. The key thing is they arise randomly. The environment isn't asking for a specific mutation.
Okay, random typos. And then there's genetic drift. That sounds like it's more about luck.
Precisely. Genetic drift refers to random fluctuations in allele frequencies just due to chance events in survival and reproduction, generation to generation. It's especially powerful in small populations.
Why small populations?
Well, imagine flipping a coin only, say, 5 times. You might easily get 4 heads just by chance, right? Not 50-50.
Yeah.
In a small population, a random event, maybe only a few individuals survive a storm or happen to reproduce, can cause a particular allele to become much more or less common purely by chance, regardless of whether it's actually helpful or not.
Okay, so chance plays a bigger role when the numbers are small.
Right.
What about movement between populations?
That's gene flow, or migration, basically. When individuals move into or out of a population, and importantly, interbreed, they carry their alleles with them. This introduces or removes alleles, directly changing the frequencies in both the population they left and the one they joined. It's a way gene pools get mixed up.
Right, mixing the genes. And you also mentioned non-random mating and sexual selection earlier. How do they fit in?
Well, non-random mating is when individuals don't just choose mates randomly. Maybe they prefer mates that look similar or live nearby. While it mainly changes how genes are combined into genotypes rather than the overall allele frequencies themselves, it can still nudge the evolutionary path.
And sexual selection.
That's a special case of natural selection, one that Darwin himself identified. It focuses specifically on traits that boost an individual's success in attracting mates and reproducing.
Okay.
This can lead to, competition within a sex, like male deer battling with antlers.
Right, the classic examples.
Or mate choice, where one sex, often females, picks mates based on certain flashy traits, like bright feathers or complex songs. This can drive the evolution of some pretty elaborate, sometimes seemingly impractical features.
Okay, so we've covered these sort of smaller scale genetic shifts within populations. That's the microevolution part. How does all that add up to the grand scale, the macroevolution, the origin of whole new species and the huge sweep of life's history?
It's really about time. Microevolutionary changes those shifts in allele frequencies we talked about, driven by selection, drift, mutation, gene flow. When they accumulate over vast stretches of geological time, they become the building blocks of macroevolution.
So small changes add up to big changes over long enough periods.
Exactly. Macroevolution covers the broad patterns we see above the species level. It's about the formation of new species, the diversification of major groups like mammals or flowering plants, resulting in the incredible biodiversity we see today.
And the tree of life concept is pretty central to visualizing this, right? The idea that everything's connected through common ancestry.
Absolutely. The tree of life is a powerful metaphor and a real scientific model showing the evolutionary relationships between all organisms on Earth. It traces everything back to a single common ancestor.
A single origin.
A single origin, likely emerging around 3.7 to 3.9 billion years ago. It's possible viruses are separate, that's still debated, but basically everything else. The tree has 3 main branches or domains: bacteria, archaea, and eukaryotes, that's us, and plants and fungi, etc.
Wow.
When you really grasp that all this diversity stems from one starting point, it underscores the fundamental unity of life. It's quite humbling, really.
And where do we fit on this tree? Humans, I mean, I'm guessing we're a pretty recent branch.
Oh, definitely. A very, very recent twig on an incredibly ancient and sprawling tree. If you compressed Earth's entire history into 24 hours, humans would show up in the last few seconds.
That's mind-boggling.
It is. Think about it. Multicellular life only arose about 1 billion years ago. The major blueprints for animal bodies appeared maybe 550 million years ago.
And there were big events along the way.
Huge events, mass extinctions like the Permian extinction, the Great Dying, wiped out enormous amounts of life, but also opened up opportunities for survivors. Then periods of rapid diversification, like flowering plants spreading relatively recently, geologically speaking.
So it's not a smooth, steady progression.
Not at all. It's punctuated by major events.
Hmm.
And it's worth remembering, even we complex eukaryotes are essentially communities of genomes. Think about mitochondria in our cells.
Look at powerhouses.
Right. They were once free-living bacteria that got incorporated into our ancestor cells billions of years ago. Same for chloroplasts and plants. We carry the legacy of these ancient symbiotic events within us.
It really does put our existence into a vast perspective. And you mentioned different fields of biology kind of mapping onto this timeline.
Yeah, it's a neat way to think about it. Fields like microbiology and biochemistry often deal with the fundamental stuff molecular processes common to all life, stretching way back.
Yep.
Genetics and cell biology. They largely investigate mechanisms that came with eukaryotes, maybe 1.5 to 2.5 billion years ago, like complex gene regulation or meiosis.
Yeah.
Developmental biology, physiology, they focus more on multicellular life, maybe the last billion years. And then neurobiology, behavior. That's even more recent, tied to animals with complex nervous systems appearing, say, 500, 600 million years ago.
So this historical view, this evolutionary narrative, it really ties all of biology together.
Precisely. Natural selection is arguably the defining principle unique to biology. You don't see it in basic physics or chemistry. But the idea of history or unique events, descent over time that links biology with other historical sciences, like geology and astronomy, it paints this picture of an interconnected, evolving universe.
It's one thing to talk about the theory and mechanisms, but what's the concrete proof? What evidence actually supports this whole idea of evolution?
Oh, the evidence is vast and comes from many, many independent lines of inquiry. It's incredibly compelling. One key area is comparative anatomy. We look at homologous structure. Yeah, these are structures in different species that share a common ancestral origin, even if they do different jobs now. The classic example is the bone structure in the limbs of vertebrates.
Like our arm, a bat wing?
Exactly. Human arm, bat wing, whale flipper, dog leg, they all have the same basic arrangement of bones. One upper bone, two forearm bones, wrist bones, finger bones.
Even though they're used so differently.
Right. That underlying similarity points strongly to a shared ancestor whose limb structure got modified over time for flying, swimming, running, grasping. It's like variations on a theme based on a common blueprint.
Okay, so similar underlying design points to shared ancestry. What about analogous structures? That sounds like the opposite.
Kind of. Analogous structures are features that look similar or do a similar job, but evolved independently in unrelated organisms facing similar environmental pressures. Think about wings again.
Right.
A butterfly wing and a bird wing both allow flight, but their underlying structure and evolutionary origin are totally different. One is made of chitin, the other bone and feathers.
So different blueprints, same job.
Exactly. Their similarity comes from convergent evolution, similar problems leading to similar solutions independently, like the white winter coats of an Arctic fox and a ptarmigan bird. They're not closely related, but camouflage in snow favors white coloration.
That clears up the distinction nicely.
Yeah.
What other kinds of evidence are there?
Embryology is fascinating. Looking at the early developmental stages of different species reveals striking similarities. Structures often appear that are modified or disappear in the adult.
Like what?
Well, all vertebrate embryos, including humans, have structures resembling gill slits at some stage, and a tail. These reflect our shared ancestry with fish and other vertebrates.
Wow. Gill slits. Okay.
Then there's biogeography, the study of where species live geographically. It provides powerful evidence. The unique plants and animals on isolated islands or continents like Australia's marsupials.
Right. Kangaroos and koalas.
Or the specific distribution of plant families like the Proteaceae across South America, Africa, Australia. These patterns make perfect sense when you consider evolutionary history combined with continental drift, the movement of tectonic plates over millions of years.
So where things live tells a story about their past.
Absolutely. And of course, there's the fossil record. While it's not perfectly complete, fossilization is rare. It provides a tangible history of life. We find fossils showing transitions between groups, clear sequences of change over vast timescales. It's direct evidence of past life forms.
Okay, so anatomy, embryos, geography, fossils. It's a lot. Yet, despite all this evidence, there are still some pretty common misunderstandings about evolution floating around. Let's tackle a few of those for our listeners. One you hear a lot is, evolution is just a theory.
Ah, yes. This really comes down to the difference between the everyday use of the word theory and the scientific use. In everyday chat, theory often means a guess, a hunch, maybe speculation. But in science, a theory is something much bigger. It's a well-substantiated, comprehensive explanation for some aspect of the natural world.
Like gravity.
Exactly, like the theory of gravity or germ theory or atomic theory. These are built on enormous amounts of evidence, repeatedly tested, confirmed through observation and experiments. Evolution, in the scientific sense, is one of the most robust and well-supported theories we have. It's not just a theory, it's the bedrock explanation for life's diversity.
Okay, good clarification. Another one, individuals evolve. People sometimes talk like a single animal changes over its lifetime to adapt.
Yeah, that's not quite right. Evolution happens at the population level, not the individual level. It's about changes in the frequency of genes alleles within the entire population over generations.
So I don't evolve, but the human population can.
Precisely. Individuals develop, they grow, they learn, they might acclimatize to conditions, but their fundamental genetic makeup doesn't change during their life in a way that gets passed on, except through reproduction. It's the differential survival and reproduction of individuals with certain traits that causes the population's overall genetic makeup to shift over time. The population evolves, individuals don't.
Got it. What about the idea that evolution explains the origin of life? Does it?
That's another important distinction. The theory of evolution explains how life changed and diversified after it first appeared. It describes the processes that took the earliest, simplest life forms and led to the incredible complexity and variety we see today.
So it doesn't cover how that first spark of life happened.
No, that's a separate, although related, scientific question, the field of mabelbiogenesis, the origin of life from non-living matter. It's a super complex area of research figuring out how those first cells got going. Evolution kicks in once you have replicating entities with heritable variation.
Okay. I've also heard people suggest that organisms evolve in response to environmental changes, almost like they try to adapt, or that evolution is directed towards a goal.
Right, that implies some kind of intention or directionality, which isn't how it works. The key is that variation already exists within a population.
From random mutations, right?
Exactly. Random mutations and genetic shuffling during sexual reproduction create a diverse pool of traits. Then, when the environment changes, it acts like a filter. It selects individuals whose pre-existing traits happen to make them better suited to the new conditions.
So the environment doesn't cause the right mutations to appear.
No. It just favors the survival and reproduction of individuals who, by chance, already have advantageous traits. Think antibiotic resistance in bacteria.
Okay.
Resistant strains often exist in tiny numbers even before antibiotics are used. The antibiotic doesn't create resistance, it just kills off the non-resistant bacteria, allowing the pre-existing resistant ones to multiply and become dominant. Selection acts on existing variation, it doesn't direct the variation itself.
That's a really crucial point. Finally, what about the claim that evolution is controversial among scientists? Is there a big debate in the scientific community?
Honestly, no. This is largely inaccurate. The overwhelming scientific consensus, globally, is that evolution by natural selection, and other mechanisms like drift, is the fundamental organizing principle of biology and the best explanation we have for the history and diversity of life.
So scientists generally agree on the core ideas.
Absolutely. Of course, scientists are always investigating and debating the finer details, the exact tempo of evolution, the relative importance of different mechanisms in specific cases, refining parts of the tree of life. That's how science works. It's always refining. But the core concept of evolution itself, it's as well established as anything in science. Any significant controversy tends to come from outside the scientific community, often based on religious or philosophical beliefs, not scientific evidence.
Okay, that's very clear. So evolution stands as this incredibly powerful, well-validated framework for understanding life. And you touched on this earlier, but could you maybe circle back to its connection to the broader universe before we wrap up?
Yeah, definitely. That idea of common ancestry, it doesn't just connect all living things on Earth today. It stretches all the way back to the very origin of life from non-living matter, probably around 3.9 billion years ago.
So connecting life to non-life.
Exactly. It means all life on this planet is fundamentally interconnected, tracing back ultimately to the non-living chemistry of the early Earth and thus to the universe itself. And the connection goes even deeper.
How so?
Well, think about the elements that make up our bodies: carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, iron. Many of the heavier elements, everything heavier than iron actually, wasn't formed in the Big Bang or in ordinary stars.
Where did they come from then?
They were forged in the intense heat and pressure of exploding stars, supernovas. Those explosions scattered these heavy elements across the galaxy, and they eventually became incorporated into new stars, planets, and us.
So we're literally made of stardust.
In a very real sense, yes, we are stardust.
Yeah.
It connects us not just to all life, but to the entire history of the cosmos in this incredibly profound and tangible way. It's a truly awe-inspiring perspective when you think about it.
Wow. Yeah, that really does bring everything together.
Hmm.
So to kind of sum up, evolution is this cornerstone of modern biology. It's driven by mechanisms like natural selection, genetic drift, mutation.
Mm-hmm.
It's supported by just immense amounts of evidence from all sorts of different fields, and it explains the incredible diversity and the deep interconnectedness of all life on Earth.
Okay.
And it links us all the way back, not just to the first life, but to the universe itself.
Precisely. Understanding evolution gives us an incredibly powerful lens for comprehending the natural world, and importantly, our own place within it.
It really does make you pause and think about our place in the grand scheme, doesn't it? You, listening right now, you're part of this unbroken chain of life, stretching back billions of years. You're connected not only to every other living thing, but, in a way, to the very fabric of the cosmos. What are the implications of that connection for how we see ourselves, maybe how we interact with the natural world, and what new questions about life's history has this deep dive sparked for you? Maybe take a moment to think about that. Thanks for exploring with us.